I'm the department chair for Geoscience. This makes me super nervous for some reason talking to my peers, so I fall down next. A lot of people don't know, but we're 3 disciplines: geography, geology, and GIS. We have 2 degrees and 1 certificate, and 1 full-time faculty member, and about 7 or 8 rotating adjunct faculty. The stars mean these are new faculty members, excuse me, in our program. So that's who we are. We used to be part of physical science, but about 7 or 8 years ago, we made our own department that is now geoscience. So accomplishments. Anybody know the lake? It's not Folsom.
Is that where the Angora is?
It's pretty close. Nice. Monica, you should.
I didn't know there were going to be quizzes.
I'll give you a hint. Lake.
Echo Lake.
So productivity is up. It's up. The numbers are in our program review. Thank you, Winnie. If you'd like to look at the numbers, you're welcome to. But it's up for a couple reasons. I thought the reasons were more important than putting the numbers up here. Scheduling, I've been working with Greg quite a bit over the last year to improve our scheduling and kind of get rid of a few things. A couple things that have improved it. We got rid of the dead times. Like we picked up a lot of FTE from RCC when they opened up, but the timing of those courses were on Fridays or in evenings or Thursday night classes or something like that. That didn't work out. So we lost a little bit at FTE by reducing those classes, but it's actually improved our productivity for a couple of different reasons. Our online courses are up. We've been doing online courses in Geosciences for quite a while, and we've upped those numbers quite a bit, kind of a feather in our cap. We're the only program as of last spring that would have physical geography and the physical geography lab available online in the state of California, which is really cool. Doing an online physical science lab is really hard. So yeah, thank you again. So that's one of the things we're really proud of, is a lot of work to get it there. The target for OEI, and for any of you that have been making OEI classes, has shifted since we did that last spring. So the work we've done, while great, needs to be redone to align with the new parameters that we've learned about this year. So that's really helped our program. It's a tricky one for Geoscience because we're a small program. We don't have a lot of FTE to spread around. So when we put just a few classes online, it reduces our on-ground offerings and creates some ancillary effects that aren't necessarily good, in that as a small program, if you don't have a lot of on-ground classes, there's not a lot of people walking around saying, oh yeah, I'm in geography. I'm in Professor Riskin's geology class at 11 o'clock. So online is great. It helps our productivity, but I believe it reduces our campus presence a little bit, which is hurting us in the long run, I think. But we'll figure out a way to get around that. But productivity is up, and I'm grateful for that. And because it's up, it's allowed us as a department to offer some things that are really important to geosciences. If you talk to anybody that's taken a geoscience course or was a geoscience major, field studies is super important as part of that learning environment. And so our institution, while now we're really good at it, Monica and Greg have worked out a mechanism to where we can offer a geoscience field studies class every year, and it's really popular, and it's been a lot of work to get to that, because that's a low productivity course. However, it's super important to the students that are into geoscience. So I'm really grateful that admin has been able to work with us to find a way that we can make that happen. And this has kind of been our motto. We're doing more with less FTE. Let's see, OEI is good, staffing has improved. Yeah, we'll just keep moving there.
And they're cool.
Does anybody know where that picture's taken from? I'll give you a hint. It was right next to the other photograph. This is at Echo Summit. It was a foggy day. That's Lake Tahoe right over there that you can't see because of the fog. So again, Monica helping out with support to get a bus for this particular trip. It snowed up there that day, and it was really, really nice for all these students to get out of the snow and back into that toasty warm bus that the college provided for. So again, a really cool experience. It was 20 kids who's, really it's an unforgettable experience. A 2-day field trip up in the woods like that is pretty awesome, and it's great to have support from admin for that. This is kind of the theme that I've been going on a little bit, is creating a culture for geosciences on our campus. As a small program, we have to move a lot of pieces around, especially when FTE gets contracted and enrollments go down. We get rid of some of our fringe courses, which are really popular, however, may not be as productive as other classes. So this sort of contraction and expansion doesn't do much for creating a body of students who think of themselves as geoscientists. Part of the challenge is that is in K through 12. I was just talking to my daughter. She's a freshman at Eldorado High School, and she said she had 2 choices as a freshman. You could go on an earth science route, or you could go bio. She chose bio. I'm sure we're still working through that. But that's a story you see a lot with incoming freshmen. There's not a lot of geography and there's not a lot of geology. There is earth science, but earth science is a really broad course that hits a lot of different things. Geology is just a little bit of it. So we don't have a lot of students arriving at our college who want to be geoscience majors. So our role is to impose upon them, hey, geoscience is great for lots of different reasons. If you're interested in climate change, if you're interested in environmental engineering, this is where you start on that path. But it's hard because most of our students, seriously, like 95%, are just looking for that transfer course satisfying their Area B1 physical science requirement, and it's easier than biology. Their counselors often tell them a lot, although that's life science. So that's a bit of a challenge. However, I think some things like our field science courses, like our geoscience or GIS courses that we do, our outreach activities are helping to build this culture, and that's what I would like us to move forward with as a department as we move on this pathways, is to have more of an identity as a geoscience program on our campus. A couple things that I think are helping with that. Sam has really helped us out and encouraged us to use embedded tutors in our labs, and this has just been huge, not only for students who are taking the class to have an additional student there to help them in a teacher's aid perspective, but the students who've done it, just, you can't believe the stories they tell you. It's really been a springboard for them to take off on their own educational path, so we're really excited about that. We do a lot of recruiting to get embedded tutors every semester. Julie's helped us develop some GIS internships, the field studies courses we talked about. Makerspace has been an ongoing thing that Geo coordinates with Makerspace a lot, and that's created a lot of neat opportunities. Another one that's been pretty cool, and again, using kind of some dead space on campus, is the concept of a Geo study hall. Greg has helped us work this out, that in the college hour between 12 and 1, lectures end at 12, labs start at 1, there's this dead hour in our lab classroom. Almost all of our adjunct open that up to be a geoscience study hall for any student in geoscience, and so that's creating a space where students who may not even be in the same class, they can meet and go, oh, you're in geography, I'm in geology, can you help me with this? And so it's creating a bit of that culture, which I think is really important. Thank you. Let's see, what else have we done? I'll just keep moving forward here. There's a picture of you, Max. Why don't you just So that's up there. This was a Makerspace coordination project between Max and Zach and I. This was Lava Cap, right? Wasn't that day? I was looking at my phone, I couldn't remember. So collaborating with other departments and other institutions on campus, I think will help us build that geo community that I'd like to see growing on this campus. One thing that's interesting, when you look at productivity, you know, GIS is pretty flat, so to speak, which would be expected for that particular discipline. Geography is way, way up. Geology actually dropped by about 10%, not only in students succeeding in each class, but also pursuing degrees. Students don't get geology degrees at community colleges. This is one of the interesting things that's kind of ironic. They don't need them, I guess, would be the best way to look at it. If you talk to a geologist, most of them don't worry about a degree unless it's their 4-year degree, and that's kind of true in the workforce as well. It's kind of a neat value-added thing, I think, for a student, if maybe they're a bio major and they have a minor in geology. But course productivity has been down a little bit, and I think that's probably, my gut says that over the last year and a half, we spent a lot of attention on geography, and geology's been kind of pushed off to the side there. But thanks to some adjunct input, thank you, Sam. You know I was going to talk about you. Encouraging us to look at our geology offerings and to get back on track so that students can start completing geology degrees, or at least have the opportunity to. One thing that's a challenge for us is that when we contract, we just offer those core courses. So the handful of geology students we get, historical geology is a great example. We offer that class at best every 2 years, and throughout the district, it's a really hard course to offer. However, it's required for the geology degree. And when we offer it here, honestly, I would say about every 6 years the class goes, because we have a policy that if there's not a certain number of students in the class, it's not going to go. And so it's kind of hard to create completers and to create culture when we have that approach. I understand that there's 2 parts to our institution. There's teaching the students, and then there's keeping the doors open and maintaining productivity. But that's one of the challenges that's keeping us from being entirely successful in geosciences. As we look at enrollments, in the future we might be looking at another full-time faculty member. Kathleen Kirkland, when I first got hired 15 years ago, said, in a couple of years there's going to be 15,000 students here. You better make room in your office because you're going to need room for all these different instructors. We haven't even come close to that yet, but I think we might be getting, it might be there right now, right? Maybe. So we're at a point where our enrollments will be close to what other campus enrollments are, and I think we will need a geology faculty member here to out our program and support that growth. The GIS program is interesting. That's our career ed certificate. However, we're one of 4 programs in our district, and when we have our district GIS meetings, we're starting to realize that we're a little bit overstocked with GIS instruction. And when you have a small campus like ours, and say 10% of the people decide, I'm going to wait to take my GIS class, or I'm not going to take it this year. When our enrollments drop from 18 to 15, the class goes away. If it happens at ARC, they go from 22 to 18, and the class goes. So they're in a position where even in low enrollment periods, they can keep supporting the culture and keep students moving towards those degrees and certificates. Here, we're just small enough that it makes it really hard unless we're willing to make a commitment as an institution to saying, okay, super low enrolled classes are okay for a little while, knowing that it's going to come back. To that end, we're going to streamline our GIS program and make it smaller and a little bit more obtainable, and it'll be the smallest certificate within the district, but I think that's important because we had a really neat, what I thought was an awesome 16-unit GIS certificate. It's designed for people who are in the work first who want to come back and get additional training, but nobody really gets that. I think we've had 5 completers of that GIS certificate, and so Vicki was really good at saying, hey, why don't you take another look at that and see if there's a better way that we can be serving the needs of the students, because that one's obviously not it. And so that's a cool thing that we're doing now, and the changes there, they'll be up by next fall.
You're at 11 and a half minutes, Jason.
I've got 62 more slides. Just kidding. I'm almost done. So Obstacles FTE, again, a small program. It's great when we have a lot of enrollment and we can offer these courses to get the students on have that reliable pattern. I'm kind of excited about pathways and developing these plans where we can have a predictable array of courses, but that's going to require more FTE for Geosciences. Scheduling, I can't remember why I put that up there. In the GIS program, we talked about that a well. But FTE will be the biggest one. Oh, look, we wrote FTE on there again. That must be important.
It's bold.
Outreach is something that we've been doing quite a bit more. Again, going to different high schools. Greg had mentioned that while it's one thing to talk to students on campus, talking to the teachers of those students at high school, specifically science teachers as opposed to administrators, will give you a little bit more bang for the buck, and I think that's starting to pay off. We built relationships with all of our feeder high schools from El Dorado County, and the next chapter would be to start reaching out more to earth science instructors down in Sacramento County. The things that are really working. These are the big 4 that I think we need to focus on and to keep doing. The embedded tutor program, I don't see that going away, so that's a good one. Having a dedicated geospace, I think, helps support that culture. Just had some conversations about the new building, and I'm hesitating to move our space out of the old building to a new building simply because that's our identity there. The rock lab is there and all that good stuff. Continuing with good scheduling practices, and then different fiscal resources that are in our ADP. If you'd like to read that, you're welcome to, and you can see what those resources are, but it's just silly stuff. Does anybody have any questions or advice?
How do you replace Professor Weldon?
How did we or how do we?
How will you? Is Weldon on?
I don't want to, I was going to say something sarcastic, but it might impede our hiring process. He was a great addition, and yeah, he will be missed, and he's probably one of the best historical geologists that we ever had. So yeah, I don't know how we'll do that. Broadcast the net farm-wide, we'll get a good candidate, I bet.
So, I have a question. About the online lab, how does that work well in a shop, not shop? Because I just started to think about accommodating students who want to take classes online in the lab as a challenge, especially in the science field. So can you tell us a little bit about the experiences offered in the online lab?
Yeah, so Professor Susan Wells, she was a full-time faculty member, I think, at Antelope Valley College, and then she retired and she's working here as an adjunct. She helped develop the online lab for us last spring, and she's teaching it this semester. So it's taught through Canvas. Students, so we put up, she created a series of PowerPoint, because typically the way an in-class lab would work, there's a period of review, like a lecture review. In your lecture, you should have learned X, Y, and Z. Here's the outcomes. Now we're going to do a lab that'll address those outcomes. So she created presentations, many presentations for each lab content. There's a lab packet for each one. The list of materials proved to be a challenge, but in physical science, if there's some ways to work around it. We had students buy a series of maps for the geography lab, and they needed some pretty simple tools that most people have at home: compass, a ruler, a calculator. String is pretty easy. Getting the maps was actually, we served that out to a third party, the U.S. Geological Survey, so each student will have the exact same map. What's been an interesting barrier is it's not the content, but it's the downloading of the material. And I had a conversation with Angela. When we were developing the class last spring, we had a group of 3 students who were just all-star students, and one of them was acting as an embedded tutor for the physical geography lab. So Susan and I would create a lab, he would do the lab on his own, and then he would go teach that lab to students in class as the TA. So he was giving us great feedback, and he said, this is easy, I love this model, it's simple, you don't have to dive down deep to find the resources. And so that's what we built it around. But in talking to Angela, she's like, you chose your focus group of students who are really high caliber students. What you really need to pick is something that's a little more middle of the road. And so what we're finding is the technical component of downloading a PDF is hard for some students. Students get confused if there's a lecture that's a PDF, but the lab document is a Word document where they can type their answers into, and they struggle with that. And that's a big number. It's like 25% of the students struggle with just that concept of getting the resources off of Canvas so they can then do the lab and then putting it back up. So I guess the rewarding thing is it's not a content issue. When I have this debate with my colleagues around the district, I'm like, well, how can you possibly do what we do in a lab in an online environment? It's just anything can be done online. You just have to think about it differently. So those are the challenges we're working with. I think one thing that's going to actually be a simple solution for the next semester is instead of downloading all their assignments, students are going to buy a lab packet. Because we thought, okay, we'll make it downloadable. They can do the printing costs on their own. But I think for probably less than $20, they'll get a semester's worth of labs that they buy from the bookstore, and they do them at home that way. So that's our next step to see if it works.
But thank you, and I just really commend the work you're doing and creating a culture, not just the work that's happening in the classroom, but outside of the classroom in the real world, going out to accolade, doing internships, makerspace, other things, creating that culture. That's phenomenal.
Thank you.